Okay, so now we move on to substrate preparation and priming. So what we're going to do for the purpose of this video and the exercise that we're carrying out today, we're just going to jump on this old true floor that we laid down some months ago, and we're going to treat it as if it was concrete. So what we're looking for substrate wise for a true overlay is anything in excess of 25 newtons compressive strength and around about an F6 and above in flexural strength. It will go over screeds, pump screeds, as long as those minimum specifications are surpassed, then we should be okay. It will not go over an anhydrate screed. Okay, so just to make that clear, it's not advisable at all. I do know if it's been done, but I wouldn't do it. So what we're going to do is obviously we're going to use our TC7 edge grinder because we're only working with 4.5 square meters. So we're going to cut the latents off. We're just going to use a preparation cut wheel just so that we get a good scratch. On a job site, you can, if you want to, if you have the kit, you can shot blast the surface to a CSP3 finish. However, very few contractors that we work with are equipped with shot blasters, so it does tend to be a 20, 25, 30 grit metal cut, just to give the surface a nice clean off, knock off any high spots, and then you can proceed to priming. So the TC7, just a very brief rundown of the machine. Essentially, it's a 7-inch Batabo grinder, which is built around an operating cradle, where you can operate the machine standing up. There's a trigger back here and a front handle, so it's very much as you would be stood or knelt, more to the point, with a hand grinder. We've got a good dust outlet here, so we don't get any airborne dust, or very, very little. What else to say about it really? On the grinding, it's going to save your knees, it's going to save your back. An absolute joy and a lot quicker than hand grinding on your knees. So I'm going to proceed now with grinding this off, and then we'll come back and look at the substrate, execute any repairs if we need to, and then we'll put our primer down. So we've done our preparation grind, a fairly quick scratch over to give us a keyed surface, take off any snots, and also to have a good look at the substrate, check for cracks, that kind of thing. There's no visible repairs that we need to carry out here, and we'll cover polyurea repairs in another video. So just on the subject of compressive strength and the values that the substrate needs to have, we've got a compression tester, or a Schmidt hammer, whatever you refer to it as. It's a rebound action that measures the compressive strength of the material. Simply by pushing the hammer down, you can hear the rebound, and that's coming out at 36 newtons. Okay, so that's how we would go about measuring. What you would do, in fact, is probably every 200 or 300 millimeters in a grid is take a full reading of a floor. This is purely just to explain what the Schmidt hammer's for. It's quite a hard surface with regards to compressive strength. Now, probably more relevant, certainly on your polishing side of things, and again, you know, we can go into more detail with this. This is a Mohs scratch test. So it's a series of needles with different material at the tip, which is a sharp point. So it's what geologists use to determine the strength of various rocks. And it's no different to what we would do with polished concrete in order to determine which kind of diamonds you need, whether you need a soft, medium or hard bond diamond. So I've got a 6 and a 7 scratch tester here. This isn't in any way relevant for priming, I'm just simply demonstrating this piece of kit. So the 7, very slight mark, we could probably step up to an 8, just here. Okay, yeah, so that's scratching at an 8. So this particular overlay was put down probably about, let's say maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So we're scratching at 8 and we have 36 compressive. Okay, so we come on to the primer. We certainly advocate an epoxy primer and scatter with the True system. As you might or might not know, there are other primers. There's acrylic primers, other gas barrier primers that are water-based and dry very quickly. I do believe in the belt and braces approach of an epoxy primer and a quartz scatter. So this particular primer that I'm using today is the CTS TXP. It's a 2-part epoxy, and this particular kit would cover 20 square meters. We have our own version of epoxy primer, which is the SFUK Epicon DSP, which is a damp surface epoxy primer 2-part. So our kit will go 75 square meters. This particular one will do 20 square meters. Now normally what you'll do with most epoxies, you'll get a base and a hardener. And the idea is that you take the lid off of the base and pour all of the hardener in, stir it up with a paddle mixer, and then start priming. As with any catalyst-driven product, you want to get it out of the tin relatively quickly. Otherwise the heat builds up and then the product will actually start to set. So if you get it onto the floor first, then that concrete will act as a heat sink and it will give you more time to work. General curing times is around about 12 hours and beyond in moderate temperature. There is a fast epoxy, there are various things on the market like that, but just treat it as it is. Day 1 is prep and prime, day 2 is mix and lay. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken enough product out of the tin at the right ratio and simply put it into base and hardener. And so we're just going to stir this up. So that's the hardener going in. And I'm just going to use a drill on low speed. Okay, so there's no prescribed mixing time. There's no, it's got to be 3 minutes. What we're looking for is just an homogeneous mix. So that means that each colour is blended into one, and with this particular primer it ends up looking like milk. So it's just a bright white primer. And we're going to spread that using a notched adhesive spreader. So we've got one here, which is, I believe, a 2mm notch, and you can change these blades, throw them away, change them for bigger notches, etc. Some of you might be familiar with these, others not. So we've got by hand or a stand-up adhesive spreader this way. And again, that's got 2 toothed blades in it. Because of the size of this, I'm simply going to do this by hand. And then what we'll do is, once we've got the material out and spread, we'll broadcast 0.4 to 0.8mm kiln dried quartz over the surface in abundance, so that we end up with like a sandpaper type finish as per this floor here. So we'll get this out. So it's important to get it out onto the floor. We don't end up with it curing up in our bucket. Obviously we won't be doing this on a job site, I'd be using the stand-up spreader. So as you can see, we've got our primer down, we've put our scatter quartz on there, and now that sits for probably 12 to 14 hours, depending on temperature. As you can see, it's pretty much like a beach. You just get that sand down, so any heavy areas that start grinning through with the epoxy, just fire a little bit more on, move back, and out you go. You're going to sweep off the next day, save the sand, and you can recycle it, use it again. And what we're looking for, the finished product, is obviously almost like a sandpaper finish, so that we've got a mechanical key upon which to install our overlay.